say the game is getting old. Monday morning and your coffee's cold. Life is not what you want it to be.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izso, and holy cow, we have done it again. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to kick this one right out of the building. I am telling you, today, yes, he's here right with us. Oh, you're going to love him, man. It is Sean Conley, former NFL kicker. The book is entitled The Point After. Oh, man, is it good. And I don't mean just a little good. I mean, it is like great good. Folks, let me just tell you, if you have ever felt like you lost a dream, trust me, Sean has lost a dream. If you ever felt like the rug just got pulled right out from under your feet, trust me, Sean got the rug pulled out from under his feet. Right? You ever felt that way? What do you do when you don't have a plan B? Well, let me tell you something. Sean Conley is going to join us today. He's going to talk about how he discovered his plan B. He's going to give you some tips and some great insights. And oh, there are some great quotes in this book. Oh my gosh, they are fantastic. You're going to love Sean. You're going to love the book, The Point After. But before we do that, let's do what we do every week. And you know what that is, right, everybody? What we do is we talk to you about how your training is going during this pandemic, right? We talk about training in the 4 areas of your life, right? The physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, right? And then we rate ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being miserable, 10 being outstanding, 5 being average. And we check in and I ask you, how's your training going? Because, after, interviewing all these special forces guys who are Navy SEALs, Delta Force, Special Operation Forces, Green Berets, right? They all said the same thing. You know what? You never, bring up a level. You know what you do? You lower yourself to the level of your training. That's it. Right? When you're under pressure, when you're under stress, when you're exhausted, when you're tired, when you haven't eaten, when you're hungry or hangry or whatever you are, you know what? You're going to always fall to the level of your training, which is why we got to be doing something to work on ourselves every day. Now, it doesn't mean to overtrain, as Sean's going to talk about, right? It doesn't mean that we're supposed to overtrain, but it means we got to do something. We got to keep moving. We got to keep working on ourselves, and we have 4 areas of our life. So let's check in physically. First of all, physically, how's your training going on a scale of 1 to 10? Okay, what do I mean by training? I mean, okay, exercise, of course, but are you eating right? Are you drinking enough water? Are you getting enough sleep? Right? Are you taking the vitamins that you should be taking and things that you're doing those things? How would you rate your training on a scale of 1 to 10? Right? Notice I didn't say, are you killing it in the gym? That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, are you getting enough exercise? Are you eating right? Right? You eating the right things? Are you getting away from the junk food? Are you drinking water? Right? Are you getting enough sleep and rest? Right? How would you rate yourself in your training? Whatever that number is, right? It doesn't matter what that number is. What matters is, what are you going to do to get to the next number? That's what matters, right? What can you do, right? Do you need to just sleep a little bit more? Do you maybe need to de-stress a little bit more? Maybe a yoga class is in your future. Sean can help you with that too, by the way, all right? So that's your first number, whatever that number is, scale 1 to 10. Second number, the mental number, right? My wife is so good about this. She talks about mental loafers, right? You know who mental loafers are? Mental loafers are who do not take responsibility for their mental growth. Meaning, what are you doing to actively participate in growing your mind? Right? What are you learning? What are you learning about your job? What are you learning about you? What are you learning about others? What are you doing to enhance your brain, to grow in your brain? Are you being an active participant, or are you just sitting on the couch, being a mental loafer and letting things come at you? Right? That's the question. And so you got to ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think you're doing in terms of being an active participant in your own mental growth? Right? Again, same thing. Whatever that number is, it is. Right? But what are you going to do to change it? Right? By the way, a lot of things you could do to change it. Right? Read a book. Sean's book would be great. I'm just saying, it'd be a great book to read. Right? Take up an instrument. Right? Learn something. Learn a foreign language. There's a lot of things you can do. Right? All right, so that's your second number. You got a physical or a mental number. How about a spirit? How about an emotional number? You know what? Emotionally, you know what? It's really all about, being intentional about your emotions. You know what the biggest problem is? The people that we're closest to, we have a tendency to not be as intentional about how we talk to them. That's really the truth. You ever notice it, right? I mean, you can be nicer to somebody that you don't know than you can be to like your parents or your spouse or your kids or whatever, right? But we need to practice that same intentionality, right? To being kind, to being nice, right? We get to controlling our emotions. Right? And not only is it about being kind, being nice, and controlling our emotions in that way, and especially under pressure, but then the other thing is, how well can you tap into the emotions of another person? How well can you really understand what they're saying to you? And by the way, that's intention. You have to ask yourself what you're going to do about, really saying, I'm going to listen. I'm going to be an active listener. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say you're emotionally doing in that area? And then, what are you going to do to change it? Right? So you got 3 numbers. Now leaves the 4th. Spiritually, and a lot of people go, oh, Jay, don't talk about spiritual stuff. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to tell you. Look, we're all spiritual, right? Remove the physical, the mental, emotional. What you have left is the spiritual. And you don't think you have anything left. Trust me, you have something left, because there's always something inside of us that goes a little bit further. Right? Sean talks about, in the book, he'll talk about that, he played through pain. Well, how do you do that? Well, there's this spiritual side of you that the Spirit carries you through. Right? Beyond what your emotions and your mind and your body is telling you, there's the spirit of a human being that pushes them sometimes in a way that they can't be pushed in any other way. People can refresh that spirit in people. People can encourage that spirit in people. The fact of the matter is, if you've got plans for the future and they haven't happened yet, but you know and you believe that they will happen and you can see it, that's faith. Faith is spiritual. Sorry, we're all spiritual. Right? And then, what brings you a sense of peace? What brings you a sense of, centeredness in the world of chaos that we live in? Right? Is it God? Is it nature? Is it meditation? What is it? And is it working? What are you going to do to change it? So you have 4 areas of your life, right? Those are the 4 areas. You got 4 numbers, and those 4 numbers, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like the legs of the chair. If the chair is uneven, right, it's going to be bad on your posture. And at the same token, if the chair is too small, what happens is that we can't sit at a table and we can't get the nutrition that we need. And you know what? Sean Conley is someone who has had to work his way to balance his chair. And I think he would tell you that even at this point, and even though we don't know each other real well, but I think he would tell you, I think I'd confidently say that he's still working on his chair just like I am. Just working on the legs of it. He is a native of Erie, Pennsylvania. He fell in love with kicking at the age of 8. He, really crazily, he was a soccer guy who was able to eventually play football as a kicker. And senior year, he was the starting kicker for the University of Pittsburgh. He then began this, career in the NFL and played with the Lions, the Indianapolis Colts, the New York Jets, and then finally the European Scottish Claymores. And thankfully, trying to escape from the arena, he almost played in the Arena Football League, but he escaped that. He and his wife now, Karen, beautiful story, and she seems like just an absolutely gem, are now own several yoga studios, and Sean is a yoga instructor, and for 18 years he's been leading yoga trainings and retreats all over the world, and he has helped everybody from lawyers to Hollywood actors to doctors and people of all walks of life. He has worked with the Steelers, the Penguins, and the University of Pittsburgh basketball team. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show and welcome to A New Direction, Sean Conley. Welcome, Sean.
Hey, Jay, how's it going? I'm really excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you here because, man, what a great book. Just simply this is just one of those books. I couldn't put it down. My wife said to me when I started reading it, because I read it in a day. I literally picked it up in the morning and could not put it down. I literally read it the whole day. And this is a 250-page book, right? And I mean, I just couldn't put it down. It was just that engaging and that Awesome. Let's just dig in here, right? And by the way, love the chapters of the book. The chapters of the book are, kickoff, first and 10, right? So if you kind of are into the sports thing, it's a beautiful way of doing it. But it really is kind of cool. So let's just give a little background, right? So really, Dad introduces you, your father, who has been your hero, and by the way, who was a local legend, sports legend. He introduces you to punt, pass, and kick, and that kind of is where it gets all started, right?
Yeah, that was like a springboard. At a very young age, I played all different kinds of sports, but he just said, "Hey, you should just try this punt, pass, and kick competition." I was 8 years old. We drove out to the country. This is back in the 80s, no seatbelt, like away we went. And he didn't tell me until we got there, but it was for ages like 11 and under, something like that. So I'm like the youngest kid, and it was just I was just hooked after that. Even though I came in third place, I just didn't care. It was just something that I just at that point there that I love to play sports, but this was something. Kicking was something. Wow, there's something more here, and that was like the springboard.
The irony of it is you actually kind of lost it kicking.
Yeah. Yeah, I did well. I did great. Yeah, first there was the punt, then the pass. I did great with both, but then I flubbed my kick. But I just didn't care. It was just one of those things where I was just completely hooked by the competition, and just I knew it was something I could do really well, and I just kept doing it. But yeah, of the three, that I did worse with the kicking.
I just found that so funny that because a lot of times kids and this this is kudos to your father, but a lot of times kids fail at something, right? Because you had a great pass, you had a great punt, but it was a kick that you flubbed. They would have never gone back to kicking. Right? Because of the three, that was the one that you did the worst in. And yet that was the one that attracted you the most. It wasn't being a quarterback. It wasn't being a punter. It wasn't being the next Ray Guy. It was, no, you wanted to kick.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was the one that I wanted to do so well in. And so I think for that one, I remember I tried to just crush it. But I think because I flubbed it, and because I just wanted to crush it, and it was something that I just loved doing, the fact that it was a flub, I think I was able to just bounce that off my back.
This is also a time as you start to grow a little bit older that you kind of introduce us here that you are going to a Catholic school, and you start to realize in about 8th grade that you're starting to have a few behavioral issues are starting to show up. There's some concentration issues starting to happen, and your mom takes you to the doctor, and they diagnose you with ADHD, which we call now ADHD.
Right.
And one of the best stories that you tell in this chapter is you were an altar boy at the parish, and so you stole the host bread. And he started passing out the host bread to your friends, and the teachers wanted you gone. But Father David said no. And this is kind of, and maybe you want to talk about this, but this is kind of that one theme that goes through the whole book, is that there's always been this person in your life that has kind of said no. I believe in him, or I'm going to take the chance, regardless of who it is, right? Whether it's Deacon Larry who calls you pagan, whether it's Amos, who believes in you, or whoever it is, there's always this one person that, whether it's Karen down the road, there seems to be always that one person who, where against all odds, says no. I believe in him.
Yeah, I think I was blessed to have like angels show up like at different points throughout my life. And when I did that, I thought I was done. I thought they had a 3-step process to kick you out. So I'd already done like one, which was already something bad, and then I did something else bad. Like I threw snap-its at the chalkboard when the teacher turned her back, and so this was number 3, the host. And for a Catholic school, I figured it was a foregone conclusion that I was gone. But yeah, Father David showed up, and he had faith in me that I could turn around. And I don't know if it was his faith that I could turn around or just the fear of like the whole situation and my dad saying like, this is it. Like, if you get kicked out, no more sports, nothing. But yeah, luckily for Father David, he went against what the principals and the teachers wanted to do with me.
Yeah, I just wonder if people, when we look back on our lives, right? I just wonder if people recognize, how many times that there's always been someone who was willing to play that role of kind of angel, right? I mean, because he was kind of an angel, out of nowhere, right? Because he probably didn't deserve grace and mercy, but he gave it to you anyway.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Then comes your next angel in chapter 2, and her name is Karen DiPlacido. Right?
Yes.
She's your next angel. This is the beauty about the book. All of a sudden, there's these angels that keep coming at you, right? Right? And your school, which was Mercyhurst Catholic, was supposed to have a football team, and they promised you they were going to have a football team, but there's no football team, so you played soccer. And then you had this idea.
Right. Yeah. So my idea was, if you're not going to have a football team, I could have transferred to another high school, but I didn't want to do that. I liked where I was going to school. I came up with this game plan, and it really started from just watching NFL games on Sunday. And this was back in the 80s when all of a sudden there was this influx of European soccer players coming in, or they were soccer players, and they kicked them thinking, well, if these guys can do it, I can do it. So I just devised this game plan where I would just go down to the field, which was just a few blocks from my house. And I guess you could call it a field, but it was basically just like gravel, stones, dirt. And I would just kick. I would kick like for hours. And I figured, okay, well, someday I'll walk onto a college and it'll all work out. And, the plan actually worked. And, I didn't tell anyone the plan. And, there was one day where I was in the cafeteria to my good friends, and when we were all like the jocks, and my friend Doug, I decided to tell him what I was going to do because we're seniors and we're talking about our college plans. I said, hey, I'm going to walk on to college football, and he says, you can't play college football, you haven't even played in high school. And I took a pretzel and I threw it point blank. He's 3 feet away from me. I threw it right in his forehead. So that was like the first time I ever said my dream out loud. So after that point I decided to keep it a secret, but
Well, I don't think what people understand is the chances of you being able to walk on, all right, are so minuscule, right? I mean, to walk on to a Division I program, having never played in even a high school program, the odds of that are so minuscule. But you were so laser focused that this was the plan, this is what I was going to do, and even though you're right, your friends who were morons at the time, as kids can often be. Matter of fact, you didn't even tell Karen, when you were young. Yeah, because you were a little bit concerned what she would think. But this plan that you had, okay, Morton Anderson is doing it. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to find a way to get in there. And this is really where the journey of your life really changes, because all of a sudden now your focus is crazy. And then there's something else that happens to you here, though, in this. There is an addiction that starts to occur, it seems to me, where getting by yourself and doing nothing but kicking becomes kind of like this, I don't know what to call it, maybe this, this great area, the hall of confidence that you are able to build in this little area, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the ADD earlier, or now ADHD, and that was something that now looking back in retrospect, I use my ADD as like an ally quite often, and there's no doubt I feel like it helped drive me to get to where I got, to help me reach my goals. The downside of the ADD was what was going on in my head when things didn't go my way at first. And so that was something that I had to balance, because I would have these huge highs where something was going really well in my career, maybe make a kick or make a team or whatever it was. But then when it didn't go that my way, then I would be devastated. I was always able to like turn it around and get back, in the right direction. But the drive and the work effort work ethic and all that stuff, that was probably supported by my ADD, but at the same time, I had to be really careful in which direction it pushed me or pulled me at certain times.
It's really interesting as I was reading this book how there'd be times where you would just gain confidence in yourself just being out there kicking, that you could just all of a sudden, like the rest of your world could be falling apart, but man, as long as you were kicking, there was something powerful for you in those moments.
Right. And I think that was, I look back now when I used to go kick at the field by myself, and that was like my happy place. I didn't realize that at the time, but like when I was kicking at the field, like that was like everything. And so anytime things were going bad for me, if I were to go back and do my thing, go to the field, then everything is okay. Everything else that's out there is now just out there.
Love it. His name is Sean Conley. The book is called The Point After. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, listen, I wanted to tell you something about our sponsors here in New Direction. One is Epic Physical Therapy. Listen, they work with professional athletes like Sean, and others, but they also work with people like, you and me who suffer from everyday aches and pain, and we just need to get better, and we need to move better, and we need to be able to operate in our lives in a little bit better way. Maybe you're recovering from injury, or maybe you're injured, you're recovering from a surgery, or whatever it may be. Look, the elite team at Epic Physical Therapy will provide you with a customized treatment plan that's tailored to your individual needs. Look, because they work with some of the best professional athletes and elite professionals, and they work with even younger athletes, and you know what, folks like me, here's the deal. They understand they need to treat the entire body as a functional whole, not just their symptoms or your injury. So when you're ready for your epic relief and your epic recovery and your epic results, don't look any further. Go to Epic Physical Therapy. That's epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft and Team Realtors, right? For 35 years, actually more than 35 years, they've been helping people all over the world buy and sell their home. Whoa. I thought they're located in the Research Triangle Park of North Carolina. Yeah, they are, but they help people all over the world. Well, how do they do that, Jay? Well, here's what they do. First of all, they've created relationships with the best professionals all over the world. And the reason why they were able to establish those relationships with the best professionals is because they are unaffiliated. They do not belong to a national company. They are their own company, and that freed them up to be able to make those relationships with the best professionals in your area. So when you are really looking to sell your home or buy your home, right, go with the relationship maker, right? That's what she's been doing here in the Research Triangle Park for 35 years, and that's why her customers keep coming back since 1985 is to see her. So you know what? When you're ready to sell or buy your home, go with the relationship maker, go with the memory maker, go with the one where her customers and clients call her the legend of customer service. Go with Linda Craft and Team Realtors. And you can learn more by going to lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction, and we are talking with former NFL kicker Sean Conley. His book, The Point After, fabulous read, folks. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, BAM, all over. Just the book is great. Folks, you're not going to want to put it down. Like I told you, I picked it up. I could not put it down. It was just one of those books that just locked me. As soon as the opening remarks that Sean wrote, it had me and gripped me all the way through, and I just could not put it down the whole day. Chapter 3 is when all of a sudden we start seeing the plans. You've got this idea that the plan's going to go in place. You actually make a phone call to Grove City College in August of 1988, and you talk with Coach Smith on the phone. He says, hey, you know what? We let the walk-ons come on, first day of classes, come and see me. And then you go and see him, and he says, yeah, we already have a kicker. And you remind him, and you go, well, you told me to come in. Yeah, sorry, we already have a kicker. Right? I mean, right? And this is when you start questioning your dream.
Yeah, absolutely. This was the plan. The plan I had in place all throughout high school, and for me it made no sense at all. Like this was your word. I'd be here and all that stuff. And when it was over, or when he said I had no chance to, to be on the team, that was just, I just hit rock bottom. I started skipping class. Grove City I don't know if it still is, but it was a dry town. So we had to drive to the nearest town, Slippery Rock, about 10 miles away to go get, six pack or whatever it may be. And I just would hang out in my room now and just start drinking. I ended up getting a DUI because it was, for me at the time, I thought like, well, this is over. This is not how it's supposed to be. Bombed all my classes, skipped chapel. There was mandatory chapel. It had like hand in your chapel card. So the semester ends. I had a 1.33 grade point average, dropped out, and moved back home to recircle the wagon, so to speak. But it was a pretty tough place for me, and all my friends were still in college, and doing what college kids do, and I'm back in my bedroom with a wallpaper, football guys on Star Wars bed sheets.
And working at the local GNC.
Working at the GNC, taking lots of supplements, because like eventually I'm going to play football again, and that was one of the benefits.
Right.
People would return them. They half opened the protein powders, so I went home every day with amino acids and all the different proteins.
Got it. Well, one of the things that you say on page 37, and it's 3 words, you said, I felt paralyzed. Mm-hmm. And yet, even though you felt paralyzed, and you said that for you, the unknown was your greatest fear. Yeah. And I think that's probably true, for all of us, especially, we're just not sure where we're headed, and we get kind of kicked in the teeth because what we thought was going to happen didn't happen. Right? I think those two things are really, really, really big, that we go through, right? We feel stuck, paralyzed, and then we're just, I don't know what the unknown is, and that scares us. It scared you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've always struggled with the unknown, and not as much now as I did back then, but that was the hardest part, was just like, now what? And, at the time I was 18, 19 years old. And at that time that, we think that like our life is over at such a young age. And I just remember thinking, I'm a complete failure, and I was embarrassed, ashamed, like being like a college dropout. And it took me a while to move past that. And luckily, kicking, was what I think saved me, because eventually I got back to the field, and it was hard because when I dropped out, it was January, and Erie at the time, like it would start snowing in November, it would cover the grass, and you wouldn't see the grass again until about April. Is around like the college basketball Final Four. I remember that was like always the time when you'd start to see it again. And so I just started going back to the field, and that's what helped me get out of this crazy, heavy headspace where I was just, feeling paralyzed. But kicking, moving my body, getting outside, whether it was because I would go kick like on the snow. I'd go there, I'd clear a spot, just for my plant foot. Sometimes I would just tee the ball right in a little pile of snow. But it wasn't the best conditions, but to me it didn't matter. I was doing something that I loved, and it got me moving again. It was my saving grace for sure.
What a great lesson that you have right there, right? Is that you didn't just stay still. You know what I mean? This is the beautiful lesson about the book, is that you didn't stay still. I want to read a quote that you have on page 38 that I just found powerful. You said, opponents and disbelievers were already against me, but I couldn't even be against myself. I didn't fear failure. By practicing every day, I knew what I was capable of. I cultivated a faith and belief in my ability. I realized that my so-called failure with the coach at Grove City was needed. I would continue to seek out challenges. I accepted that I would experience more failures in these challenges, but that would not only strengthen my resilience and help me be the best I could be. Nothing could stop me, not even my ADD. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. At first, when this whole thing happened, I tried to blame everything on Coach Smith because he wouldn't let me come on the team. But as I worked through that whole process, like, it didn't. his decision really had nothing to do with my life, but it took me probably like 3 months to work through that. And then I realized like, hey, I can still make this happen. And what he did to me, I'm not a victim. And I think I went through that stage of like thinking, woe is me, I'm a victim here but I can't play football there. But it doesn't matter. If I look at it that way, there's no way I'm going to be able to move on.
Yeah, that's a great. There's the other great lesson, right? Is that we either will take on a victim mentality, or we'll go, no, you know what? I need this. This is what's going to prove my resilience in the long run. And man, in the beginning of the show, right? I talk about the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, right, areas. The one thing I can't, even as a coach to businesses and business professionals, I can't teach you resilience. You have to go through it, right? I mean, that's the beautiful thing about, this part of your life, because you're 18, 19 years old, and you're discovering this then. There are people in their 50s who still haven't discovered it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. For
you. It really is. So then what happens is Gannon University, your father throws a paper at you, I think it is. Gannon University where your brother is going to college, decides that they're going to start a football team. And lo and behold, Angel shows up, you get accepted. Despite 1.33, you get accepted, and you meet Coach Tim Herman, and he makes this quote. He said, it doesn't matter if anyone's ever played before. Everyone who wants to play is going to get a chance to show how they can help the team. And you said 4 words: I found a home.
Yeah. He was another angel. I mean, the fact that, they hadn't had a football team since like the end of World War II, and all of a sudden they have this coach. He just needs bodies. He needs anybody. I'm going there into his office to ask him if I could be on the team, and I still got the Coach Smith Grove City thing going on in my head that I'm going to be rejected, and it was like the opposite of that. And so it couldn't have been like a better situation for me to just, be on this brand new team with all these kids. And it was such a crazy setup of different kids. We had kids who were in the Army, and they were Marines, and now coming to college. So there was like ages 18 to 27, and it was just like we're all a bunch of ragtag players and kids, but it was like the perfect environment for someone like myself, who was this ragtag, somebody who just wanted to be part of something. And that's who we all were. We're all these kids that just wanted to be part of something. Because a lot of us, there were Division III kids who wanted to play D1, and they were high school stars, but they were too short, or they weren't quite fast enough. And so it was just like the perfect environment, for me to take the next step in my dream, was around these types of players and coaches who just did it for the love of the game.
Yeah. And that's where you meet Coach Comer, and he's the first one that comes out of nowhere after you kick several balls into the tennis court, over the goalpost, by the way. And he had his little favorite pet kicker, but then he sees it.
Right.
He's the first one who says to you, he looks at your talent and he says, "Son, you can play in the NFL." How'd that feel?
Yeah. I mean, it was funny because we've talked a few times about these angels. He at first I thought was the devil, because he's like the first practice, he's making fun of me because I have like a soccer shoe on the right, and I have a football shoe on the left, and the first practice on the field, I looked at the depth chart, and because I didn't play in high school, I'm like number 6 or 7 or whatever it was. And, it was on this big cinder block wall, and they just scribble down the names. And so I come out, and he's like this, he makes me kick last after everybody else. And then within a matter of like 2 hours, now everything completely shifted when he saw me kick.
And by the way, you wind up being the starter. And you started 0 for 4. You went 4 for 8 by the end of the year, and you're being a little hard on yourself, but it's kind of funny. It's a funny line. You said, "I was the Happy Gilmore of kickers." I mean, because you said, I could kick it a country mile. I just couldn't, right? Yeah. I mean, you could kick it forever, but you just couldn't find the post, during the game. And you talk about that for kickers, the minimum expectation is a 65% accuracy rate.
Yeah. And that's college, and NFL, if you're under 80, that won't cut it.
Really?
So it's
Wow.
Wow. And and it depends on like the level. Like so, like Division III, it's much lower. But once you get to Division I, like you've got to make 2 out of 3, otherwise, no job. But in the NFL now, I would say it's 4 out of 5, and also when you make them 2, that's factored too. So you could make 4 out of 5 kicks in the NFL, but if that 1 out of 5 that you miss is a couple game winners,
right?
That's probably it.
Well, you talk about throughout the book that you're only as good as your last kick. I mean, and people who watch the NFL, right? I mean, let's be honest. What was it, last year, the year before, or whatever? Whenever they started moving the extra points back in the NFL,
Mm-hmm.
But were we going through kickers like crazy? Did you think like maybe you should come out of retirement?
Oh, I was actually the opposite. I was so glad I wasn't part of that. Because
oh, that's funny.
Well, because the extra point at 20 yards, it's you almost have to try to miss it to miss an extra point. I mean, you have to really flub it.
Right.
I mean, you can miss hit it, but you're so close, it's probably going to go through. But the 30-yarder now, that's like the point where things are now. There's some some margin of error, like it is now shrunk. So if there's a little mishit, you can miss it. So now I see these guys, and my special teams coach at Pitt, Amos Jones, he's still in the NFL. He's with the Giants now. And, we talk here and there. And that was the one thing we talked about. He says, like, look out, because now with this 30-yard extra point, every single kick now is a field goal. There's no more extra points. There's no more chip shots. So, And then NFL teams, when they saw them missing the extra points, that was dramatic.
Well, all of a sudden, because like you talk about, confidence is everything for a kicker, right? And so if all of a sudden you start missing a few, I mean, Steven Gostkowski this year, God bless him, he came out of the gate struggling a little bit, but thankfully, they stuck with him only because of his history. But man, a lot of kickers who had gone through that, they would be done, and by the way, you're fired. Because we saw that a few years ago. I mean, it was like there were teams that were going through kickers, like there was a new kicker once a week.
It was, I remember. Well, because I'll get texts too. Like I'll get texts from friends around the country, like, you want to come out of retirement? And I'm like, okay, which kicker now, missed 2 kicks? So it happens all the time. Like the Steelers kicker was struggling at the beginning of the year. Hey, you want to come out of retirement? And then it's just, even fans, they see once the kicker misses 2 in a row, all of a sudden they're done with him.
Right.
It's like.
Right. Oh my gosh. Your life is crazy. There is, it's really hard to compare, your dream, your career with any other career, because, people don't understand. We make a lot of mistakes in our businesses, right? And I guarantee you, it's the mistakes that we make are huge. Nobody gets fired. You miss a field goal that potentially could have won the game, that could put your team into the playoffs. You aren't coming back. Mm-hmm. They're packing up everything for you, right? The Turk shows up at the door, and before you even can get yourself, you're not getting on the bus. To go back to the airport. I think that's what people don't understand about your job. The pressure of your job was immense. That's why it's a very special group of people that can do this, because you found out very quickly as soon as there were fans in the stage. I mean, you could kick all day long, but as soon as there's fans, boy, that was a game changer, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's always a weird roller coaster, because you could be riding this. I've made 5 in a row, but then there's this one voice in your head saying, hey, but don't miss the next one, because then you could go in that direction. So you could have these moments of like where you're feeling really confident, but that other voice is there, and I went through ups and downs where I felt like, luckily for me, my senior year at Pitt, like I got in a zone where I felt like I couldn't miss.
Right.
But there's other times when you're feeling the pressure, like maybe you just happen to have a bad practice before that game, so that's like your most recent experience. So it's all over the board. Like when I watch kickers in the NFL right now, and I'll see a team get down on a kicker because he's missed 2 in a row. Well, statistically, he's probably going to now make his next 2 kicks, and now they want to get rid of him.
Right.
So that's one thing I always like, give the kid a little bit more, give the guy more of a chance than that, because he's probably now gotten those out of his system. He's now due to go on a streak of making them.
There's another lesson in that, isn't there? Is that sometimes we can make a mess of stuff, but if we give people a little bit more rope, they generally will come back, won't they?
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, because it just seems to me like you have a perspective, for business people that we don't think about quite often, is that, we get into this mentality of hire slow, fire fast, right? Or vice versa. And sometimes what happens is this person keeps missing. But if we held on just a little bit longer, all of a sudden they would start making, because that's what happens when you continually practice and do the right things, right? Is that it's going to turn around.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And, if there's like a track record to the experience, I understand when I see these teams that the kickers new and hasn't put together like a body of experience, but it's hard because you can never quite like get into these kickers' heads, and I think that's the challenge that these teams don't have, is like where exactly are they at. And unfortunately for kickers, we're head cases for multiple reasons. It's not just making and missing, it's also am I really part of the team? Right. I always try to really be part of the team to like a degree of that was like will be too much. I would be in the weight room with all the linemen and the linebackers, bench pressing and squatting, and part of it was yet to be a stronger kicker, but part of it also was like I wanted to be fully accepted.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, that ended up biting me in the ass because I trained so much beyond what I needed to do that eventually my body broke down due to too much kicking and too much time in the weight room.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. You're listening to Sean Conley, former NFL kicker, and his book, The Point After, here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, I just want to tell you that we got these 2 great sponsors here on A New Direction, and they're fantastic. Epic Physical Therapy. I love them, right? Outside of the fact that they've got just the greatest people in the world, and I go there, I get my physical therapy done there. They just have the most qualified staff. They're amazing, right? But they also have some of the most top of the line equipment. The anti-gravity treadmills, the Normatec compression sleeves, the Game Ready, which I constantly talk about, the cold ice water and compression that just takes the swelling out of your joints and legs. Look, they are trained in the most comprehensive cutting-edge treatments available: blood flow restriction therapy, dry needling. They'll even put some electrodes on that thing, and whew, that'll light you up. Trust me. And then cupping, if you've ever seen those circles on the back of swimmers' backs, right? It's the cupping. They manipulate the muscle through the skin. Sean may even know something about that too, a little bit. But look, here's the deal. You are going to find that you are going to have a functional whole body experience right there at Epic Physical Therapy. If you want your epic relief, epic recovery, and epic results, don't look anywhere else. Start with Epic. Right? Go to epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft and Team Realtors. You know what? Since 1985, she's been at the top of her game in real estate. Why? Well, it's because she believes in relationships. I say it every week. You know what? You never remember what your grandmother paid for her house, but you remember every memory that you ever had. You remember every apple pie, every cherry pie, right? You remember the moments that you had, right? Because that's really what makes the home, right? And she understood that, right? Yeah, she's going to get you the best price, right? She's going to take the stress out of it, out of the real estate transaction. But what's really big is the fact that she understands that those memories are so important to you, and she wants to protect those. Right? That's why she's known as the memory maker, the relationship creator, right? And she maintains those relationships over the course of time. So look, when you're ready to sell or buy your homes, just stop. Start with Linda Craft and Team Realtors. Just go to lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction, and we are talking with former NFL kicker Sean Conley and his book, The Point After. Fabulous read. I keep saying it, but it really, I cried. I'm going to be honest. I cried. I laughed. It made me think, and it was just an outstanding read. So, folks, don't hesitate to get it. So, you do get accepted at Pitt. You actually not only get accepted, but you outkick everybody. You meet your next angel of Amos Jones. But this is when your body starts giving you signals that it's fallen apart.
Yeah, Amos was probably next to Karen, probably the biggest angel. But he helped me in so many ways. But yeah, before that year, so when I transferred to Pitt, I had to sit out and I couldn't play that year. So what I did was I just trained like crazy. I would go to the local college nearby, the other college nearby. I'd run up and down the stadium stairs. And because I was training so much, this is when injuries started to creep in, my back, my hip. I started seeing the chiropractor. And so, yeah, this was the first signs that something was amiss. But, being 21 years old, this was just part of it. So I just started to just play through the pain because that's what football players did. So at the time, I didn't think this was something that was going to eventually catch up to me. So I just kept training the same way I knew and just push through the pain.
Yeah. By the way, for those of you who you heard him say that we played through pain I don't care what level of football you played. We think we have all who played understand that there was a difference. We were told there was a difference between pain and injury. And right, you play through pain, you can't play with an injury. Right? Is that how you remember it? How did you distinguish those two things for you?
Yeah, for me, because most of my injuries were from overuse, I just kept playing through them. There was also the whole thing about, do you tell your coach when you have an injury? So when I was at Pitt, I waited till it was like the second to last game to finally tell my coach, Amos Jones, that I was having problems with my hip. He actually, he was way ahead of his time, and he said, why you tell me this now? Right. I'm not going to bench you. You're still going to play. Go take care of it. So that was a little shocking because I'd seen that on the team where players would right. They would reveal an injury and that was it. They never got their starting position back. So this was something that carried with me when I went to the NFL, that I just I would not tell any of the coaches if I had any injuries, which I ended up having them with the Colts, and I would just keep that a secret and just keep playing because I knew where I stood in the whole hierarchy of players on the team, that I had to just keep any injuries to myself.
And by the way, it got based on what you tell us in the book, they just got worse and worse. It wasn't getting, regardless of what you were doing, it seemed like it just kept getting worse. Because you described it like you would just freeze up, like you couldn't even move.
Right. Yeah. There was mornings. It was about 3 or 4 days before our game against Notre Dame, my senior year in college, and I woke up and I was completely locked up, and I had to roll off the bed. I had to crawl into the bathroom on my hands and knees to go to the bathroom. I had to relieve myself using a red Solo cup that was sitting there, and that wasn't just the first time that happened. That was something that would start to reoccur many times, where all of a sudden I would just be locked up. And then I became somewhat addicted, you could say, to muscle relaxants. So I started taking those at Pitt, and then I would always get prescriptions for those. So anytime throughout my football career, whenever I would get locked up, I would just take these muscle relaxants, which worked okay, but they made me super sleepy, super groggy, and they weren't doing anything about what was actually right. causing all this.
Yeah, so this is where you're playing through all of this, and matter of fact, what happens is that you, it's chapter 9. It's called The 2-Minute Warning, and it literally starts off with a quote: we can't let the missile touch the ball. And they're of course referring to Quadri Ismail. And you hit a kickoff and it doesn't, you tell everybody, right, it's going to go one way. You hit the kickoff, your hips closed down or shut down, and you kicked it, you didn't even kick it into the end zone, and everybody's going the wrong way, and you're stuck trying to make a tackle. That didn't go.
Yeah, we had this little secret thing, like right before I would kick it, I'd look down, I'd see where the missile is, and I would tap. If I tapped the right, depending on what side of my helmet I tapped, that's which way I was kicking it. So yeah, because my body was starting to break down, I wasn't able to do what I needed to do, and it went to the left when it should have went right. He comes right down the middle. Like a kicker's greatest ally is the sideline. If I can get the angle, move him towards the sideline, I can get him to go out of bounds, maybe get him to change direction. Unfortunately, he goes right up the middle. And so eventually him and I meet smack dab in the middle, around the 50-yard line. I have no sideline to work with. I have nothing. So I made this lunge to get him. I maybe grazed part of his jersey. He goes out. Luckily, we had like a high school all-state sprinter on our team. He tracks him down around the 10. But I go home that night. It's Halloween night. I'm out to the bar with my roommate, and there it is, ESPN, the play of the game, and there it is, and it's me missing the missile, and for the rest of the night, it would pop up like on ESPN every half an hour. There was the play. So yeah, a lot of lessons in that one, I guess.
Well, at some point, right? I mean, I know it's miserable, right? There's nothing. Listen, I remember playing in college, and I was playing nose guard. There was this quarterback who was very fleet of foot, and they would play this one play over and over again in films every year when we played this team that I played against in college. And here's what you would see. You would see me that I had this open shot at a sack. Open shot. He makes one adept small move, and you see my feet and my hands slide right by as he throws a touchdown pass, right? Because I missed it. By the way, they kept showing that film over and over and over again. I hated it. I hated it. I can't imagine. And because they would show it in team meetings, like it'd be the next year, and here, hey, we want to show you what Jay did. This is what Jay did, right? Great, thank you so much, right? I mean, it was like a highlight reel, right? And I can't imagine if it was on ESPN. I would just be, oh no, not again. I'd stop watching ESPN.
Well, unfortunately, at the time too, that was like the only media. There might have been ESPN2 at the time. There was no Twitter or anything, so
right.
that was like the highlight.
What people don't understand is that when you and I went to college and ESPN came out, that was it. Mm-hmm. That was our only source of 24-hour sports. That right. was it.
Right. If there was a game on ESPN, like that was like the game.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was. Well, you come out of college, you are told that you were the third best kicker in the draft as you meet with the Giants, and the draft comes and the draft goes, and you don't get drafted.
Yeah, there was a handful of kickers. My agent, when he would talk to teams, they would tell him, where I was in like their pecking order. So it seemed like really positive, on the day of the draft. There was a lot of teams that needed kickers. There's a lot of teams that had kickers that were getting too old, had really bad seasons the year before. So we had like 4 or 5 teams that thought that my agent thought they would draft me, and teams came and went, and they took kickers, and it's just one of those things where there's a whole numbers game. And I was one of those kids just kind of like sitting there on the couch as like the names kept going, and the phone never rang until luckily after the draft, which ended up being actually a better scenario, I think, most likely than I would have got drafted, because then I wouldn't have had a choice. So
Right.
it actually worked out in the end. But when I didn't get drafted, I thought, oh man, this is the worst thing in the world. It's over. But
Right.
it wasn't.
And you got to play a little bit with Detroit, and you got to play a little bit with New York Jets, the Colts. But there came a time when it was just over. You knew your body. You just done too much to your body. Matter of fact, the Jets was the final piece when the doctor was trying to find your hip flexor, and they couldn't find your hip flexor muscle.
Right. Yeah. I was so driven to like have this NFL career and go out on my own terms that, now looking back, I guess it had to take something somewhat like catastrophic, so to speak, not to build it up too much, that I just couldn't do it. Because if I would call a football team and get a tryout, or my agent would get me a tryout, like I would take it. But when I was with the Jets and the doctor's looking around, he's looking around for a few minutes and he can't find anything. He tells me that the hip flexor's gone. Like that was finally it. I actually didn't even accept that at the time, because I was
Right.
like, okay, I can't. He says I can't physically do it, but I refused to believe that, because I still could do it,
Right.
but I still had pain. I would kick 10 balls, 9 would be normal strength, 1 wouldn't be. So I couldn't let go. And the only reason why I couldn't let go, because even though I knew I couldn't physically, it was just because I had in my head, like, this is not how it's supposed to end.
Mm.
So then I kept going and kept going. And then eventually finally realized, okay, you got to step away. But it took more than just physical to knock me out. I had to work through the whole mental process of it.
Let's discuss this a little bit about, not going out on your own terms, because I think I can't speak for everyone who's listening to the show all over the world, but I know that there are people who listen to the show that have had dreams and they've been shattered, right? And this isn't the way it was supposed to go. This isn't what was supposed to happen. This wasn't the way I scripted it out. This wasn't the plan. This wasn't the way I was going to manage it. This wasn't the way that I saw it. And I've spoke with a number, as you and I have talked about, I spoke with a number of, former professional athletes who, it just ended. College athletes, it just ended. They all talk about going into this dark place. What was that like?
Yeah, I think when I say, like, I didn't want to go on my own terms, there was another element of, like, I had in my mind how it was all supposed to go. So I was supposed to be in the NFL for, let's say, 10 or 15 years. I'm going to get married. I'm going to have this family. I'm gonna make enough money where after my NFL career ends, I could do whatever I want. And so I think that became so ingrained in me when it was all of a sudden the rug was just pulled out, that again, it was like a moment going back, like, where I was just paralyzed. Like, yet this time, now being older and there being more stakes and that the actual dream being over, I was paralyzed for quite a while. And it took me, I think, a few years mentally to be able to get beyond it, and I think it was because everything was supposed to go to this plan and the plan didn't go that way, that I just came crashing down and just didn't know what to do next. And so I spun wheels for a while, and the hardest part was like the regret, where I would just start to replay my career thinking, oh, if I would have done this, I would still be playing. Like, let's say I wouldn't have trained as much, I would still be playing. Or let's say this team drafted me instead of the Lions, then I could still be in the NFL. So I went through that for a while, thinking of, all these different things. If this one little thing would have happened different, I'd still be in there. So that was a couple years of going through that until, I was able to move on from that.
Look, if you were to give somebody some advice, that's lost their dream, now looking back at it in a different way, and if you could give somebody some advice about, listen, I know you lost your dream. Okay, maybe I didn't handle it the right way. Let me tell you how, if I were to do this over, how I might handle it different. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would just say that, every moment that, that we're spending looking at this door that's been, shut in our face, that we're missing opportunities to do something else. Like I've seen this quote out there before, like, we spend all this time, staring at the door, that, we're missing something else out there. Like, because you're just staring at the door, and that was me. I stared at this door for years of what, of this, this dream that I had that was supposed to go a certain way, that I was missing all these other opportunities that I could go on. I think also the other thing that I think makes sense now too is, like, I'm glad now, looking back, that my career was as short as it was, because I was able to then move on and, find other careers that were so much more fulfilling than the NFL, which I thought was like the greatest. But now looking back, it wasn't. Like, finding, like, what I do now and other jobs I've had since then have given me even more fulfillment. But it's that, being locked on to, like, this is how it's supposed to be, this is how it's supposed to be. It wasn't good, for my health. And I think about how I was just, stuck with there, and it hurt me, not just, my body wasn't beat up physically, but like how it affected my mind, how I just thought life was over. But it was just, looking back now, it was just a waste of time to think like that.
It affected your relationships too, right? I mean, it wasn't just, right. I mean, it was affecting everybody. I think that's the thing that people miss in that whole thing, is that, it does take its toll on you, but it's also taking its toll on everybody. Because I mean,
Sure. Yeah. And
go ahead.
Yeah. I say my wife Karen was, like, always, she's always been like my biggest support. But now I look back and, like, she had to like be my therapist after that. And I think back and, like, wow, I wasted so much of her time for her saying, hey, it's okay, that, like, you're an NFL player, it all worked out well. But, like, I look back and how, like, selfish that is for me to have had to have her do that. And she did it willingly, and, like, that's who she is. But, like, to have had to have her put all that time and effort to, like, help me move on, was really not necessary. And I wish I would have moved on quicker. And it's all like water to the bridge now.
Right.
But nowadays, like, when something doesn't go right, like in our business or life, like, I still look back to those days where I held on to the past too long, and I just try to move quicker forward, whenever, as soon as possible now. And there's still, like, always that processing that'll happen, but I try to shorten that processing time.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Listen, we've been on for an hour, and you've been gracious, so gracious. First of all, thank you for.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And
it's been fun.
This has been a blast for me. The show's called A New Direction because we help people try to find a new direction in their life, their career, their business, success, leadership. And you've clearly done that. But if you could give people one last little, Sean Conley, former NFL kicker, new direction, what would you leave people with?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we can do for ourselves, like, when we do get in these dark places where we feel stuck, or we're stuck, in the past, think about, oh, I wish things would have gone this way, or we're always thinking about the future, think this is how I want it to be, and we're always in this headspace, or we get stuck in that space. I think one of the best things that we can do for ourselves these days is to get out. And, you talked a lot about it in your show there, is we have to find time each day, if possible, of getting this headspace, whatever it is, whether it's yoga, whether it's meditation, whether it's just taking a walk in the woods, whether it's going for a run, like anything. But I found, for me, like, that's what really helped me move on from my football career. It wasn't just time. It was when I did start to take up yoga and meditation, and there's other ways to get that clear mind, but that's what that helped me do. When I spent time, doing yoga, I was able to just look at things with, like, a different perspective. And so nowadays, that's why I teach it. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because I know it helped me move on from that headspace. But it still happens today, like, I'll maybe get into something like going on with, like my mom's health, and so I'll be really, like, all wrapped into that. But if I go, like, okay, I'm gonna now, like, go do some yoga for 20 minutes, or I'm gonna go for a walk in the woods for 20 minutes, it really helps me get out of that. And so, that's where I find like that's how I can tap into my creativity. That's where I can tap into like moving beyond places where I'm stuck with the business or whatever it is. And so I think that's always helpful for new direction is to always make time, like make that part of your daily routine. So yeah, your daily routine is doing like your to-do list for work and for home, but there also has to be something about taking care of yourself on that to-do list, because not only are you going to benefit, but all the people that you interact with, are going to benefit as well when you take time for yourself to clear your mind and give yourself that time.
His name is Sean Conley. The book is titled The Point After. Available bookstores everywhere. Folks, he was great, wasn't he? He was so great, right? You know what I tell you every week, right? Be inspired, because when you're inspired, you know what? That means you'll inspire other people. And when they're inspired, that means that they'll inspire other people. And in turn, that makes this world a great place, doesn't it? I'm going to be back next week with another great guest, another great book, another great show. As I say to you, all everywhere. Ciao, everybody. Miss you, Bob.
Come for a new direction. Yeah, yeah. New direction. Yeah, yeah. When you lost your confidence and the answers don't make sense, you got to keep your hope alive. You got to know you can survive. This is your time. A new direction, a brand new day. A new direction, things are gonna change. You can find the strength to go a different way, yeah. The time has come. Your dreams will take you places you